Afternoon, Cherries fans, and welcome to this latest show here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Before I welcome on my very special guest, here's a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out what they can do for you, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. Now, Bill Foley, of course, has put in a bid to purchase AFC Bournemouth. What we wanted to do was find out a little bit more about Bill from somebody who knows him better. It is a pleasure, therefore, to welcome on to Up the Cherries in all departments, Steve Linkowski from Urinating Tree. Afternoon, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well. And thank you for coming on this show. So, as you may know now, Vegas Golden Knights owner Bill Foley has put in a bid of £130 million to take over at AFC Bournemouth. And what we wanted to do firstly was find out a little bit about Bill Foley and what he's actually done at the Vegas Golden Knights, because they're quite a new team, aren't they?
Yep, they started in 2017, and 130 million technically is chump change for them because they had to pay a $500 million expansion fee to the NHL for the Vegas Golden Knights to be born. And plus, I was looking up as well. He's trying to buy a team in France, Lyon. So it's something around like 250 million combined. Yep. So he's kind of investing in like someone else to buy these teams. He's just the financier. So that's more about like what Foley's trying to do, go like expand his territories into the sports realm.
With regards to Vegas Golden Knights, how have they actually done in the NHL?
The Vegas Golden Knights have been they've had some frustrations as of late, but they have been one of the more successful teams in the NHL. One thing you cannot say about Bill Foley, or you can say about him, he wants to win at any cost. He will do anything it takes to win. He is, he's brought in star players, a couple the first year was more of a shock because after the expansion draft, they had a bunch of incredible revelations, ended up going to the Stanley Cup final. They lost in that round, but making it to the finals, it's like, say, a Leicester City, just coming out of nowhere to be one of these incredible stories, and it forced them to accelerate their window. They brought in a bunch of stars, Max Pacioretty, Mark Stone. They've gotten a little desperate as of late, but you cannot deny his want to win, even though it may shake up team chemistry. Alex Pietrangelo, star defenseman a couple years ago. Jack Eichel, who's one of the great young players of the game. They brought him in as well. So I don't know how much of that's management and Foley, but Foley's the one signing the check, signing off on that. So if you're a Bournemouth fan, I mean, I don't know how he's going to translate into the transfer market and the development academy. But at the same time, I think he will pour finances and resources to get them at least to a competitive spot in the Premier League, hopefully.
Well, one thing that we are doing at the moment is we are building, or it has stalled to a certain extent, our training ground. So as we were speaking beforehand, in the US, You've got colleges and schools, and it'd be quite interesting to know how that works and that would translate. But what they are doing is they have got this training ground that is building. Is that one of the major attractions, do you think, for Bill Foley?
I think a little bit of that. I think also the ability to raise value and sort of build the prestige of a team, even though Premier League is probably one of the more brutal, like, divisions or sort of leagues to really break out in because everyone's trying to build in. You have American financiers. We were talking about this earlier. You have Kroenke of the LA Rams, the Colorado Avalanche, Denver Nuggets. Then you have the Glazers, who own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Shah Khan, who's Fulham. I mean, Fulham's been having up and down as well. And you've also have, Saudi Arabia just bought a team, Newcastle. Yep. You have Russian oligarchs, even though those are kind of, with the situation going on, they're trying to get them out. You have a bunch of different pieces who are willing to just throw money left and right, even more money than Foley could. So it'll be a tough regard either way. I know he can definitely develop you were mentioning about the training grounds. They're having issues there. He can definitely pour money into that. He can definitely pour money into the youth academy, really bring in some quality players and try to develop them. I can definitely see that, because one of the things with the Vegas Golden Knights, especially with their misfits, especially first year, he was really big into developing them from within. So that might be the management core. He can try to really get in and trust there. So I think in the same time, he's more, I can't tell if he's hands-off or hands-on. I don't know how involved he is with the team. I mean, it'll probably come out that, like, oh, he's been, dictating all these moves, but I don't know, like his total influence on things. All I know is he wants to win at whatever cost.
They have been quite ruthless as well with the coaches, haven't they?
Yes.
They have had quite a lot of changes on that front. Could it be a situation where a manager, if he isn't getting the results, won't be given time?
The difference with the NHL is they fire coaches left and right. You breathe improperly in the NHL, you are instantly fired, and then they'll bring in a new coach, really try and shake things up, and then try and change that. Vegas has been through 3 coaches. First was Gerard Gallant, relatively respected coach, got a bad shake in Florida when he first started, led them to the Cup. Second year, they had a really disappointing finish. They blew a 3-1 series lead in the playoffs to San Jose in the first round. And then in the middle of the second year, he loses 4 games. Fired. And it's like, they were having a decent year. We were all just sitting there like, wait, what? You just get confused. You bring in Peter DeBoer, who does lead them to a couple deep runs. This is 2020, so you had that bubble cup. Make it to the conference finals. They lose to a team they should have beaten. 2021, same thing. You go against Montreal, try to get to, a team you should crush. They lose in 6 games. So they've had some situations where, once again, they've gotten rid of fan favorite players. For example, Marc-Andre Fleury, face of the franchise since its inception. He had a rough playoff. He's had some real gaff goals. They, to add cap space, because one of the main things with the NHL in comparison to Premier League, you have a salary cap. And it's very tough because the past few years, it hasn't gone up. It's stayed flat because of the pandemic. Maybe gone up maybe $1 million over the past year, but it's not elevating say an NFL is. Because the NFL, it's the salary cap's a social construct. You can just spend and just restructure and just throw bonus money left and right because you're just pouring money into the system. But speaking of Marc-Andre Fleury, they traded him for nothing just to add cap space. And they did it this past year as well with Max Pacioretty. And these were 2 of your core pieces. So I think in the same time, you could be ruthless, especially with some of the fan favorites if they're not getting it done. I don't know if they're going to give them away for nothing, straight up release into the market, but I think they will try to add them to the transfer list, see if they can add a few pieces there as well.
I don't know if you know much about AFC Bournemouth, Steve, but one thing that we do have is a stadium which is an 11,000 seater. However, when you compare that to the other teams in the league, you've got Manchester United, Old Trafford, massive stadium, City of Manchester Stadium, Man City, Spurs, the Emirates at Arsenal. So we are relatively a small fish in quite a big pond. But it sounds like, because if I'm right in thinking, Bill Foley actually started the Vegas Golden Knights, didn't he?
Yes, he was the one who ponied up the money, won the contest, or sorry, won the bid to get an expansion franchise. It was between him and Quebec City. And the NHL wants to expand to newer markets, so they chose Las Vegas because, his finances are pretty sound. Like, I don't know if he has the money to build a stadium single-handedly from 11,000. The T-Mobile Arena is around 17, 18,000. And you also get some government help to build that stadium as well. I know Las Vegas has been trying to pour a lot of money into that. I know for the NFL, Las Vegas Raiders, they threw, I think, like $500 million investment to build that stadium. And I don't know how, like, the projects are in England. I don't know how much, like, local municipalities are able to help out with that. So I know, like, I don't know if he's going to be forced to build that with his own hands. So I think in that regard, I don't know what the upside is for a Bournemouth. Would it be 20,000, 25,000? Like, I don't know if it's going to be in the same place as, like, say, a Wembley Stadium. I don't think it's going to be anything like that. Because that's, like, total different thing. And then in that case, you'd be trying to woo the NFL in to play a few games and boost up that revenue.
One thing, of course, with American sport is the Premier League is flush with money. But it appears sports like the NFL and the NHL have also got massive backers behind them, paying some significant amounts. And I know you mentioned there about the salary cap, but what would be a salary cap in, say, for example, the NFL or NHL?
The NHL is much smaller than the NFL. The NHL is in like around an $80 to $82 million salary cap, but you have a 20 to 23 man roster. So your max players, like your highest salary is Connor McDavid, who's one of the best players in hockey. He's only making $14.5 million US, which is, it's crazy to say, oh, you're only making $14.5 million, but in comparison to like a Ronaldo or, a Christian Pulisic or even like some of the stars of, organizational football. Yeah. That is chump change. Like $14.5 million might not get you a star midfielder. Like it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go to Man City.
Yeah.
In the NFL is different because that is flush with money. You have big TV contracts. Salary cap is rising exponentially. But you do have a 53-man roster, but at the same time, your top players are making 40, 45 million. Deshaun Watson was a big example of this. He got a fully guaranteed contract, which is near unheard of at the NFL level because, you have certain guarantees, but you can just cut them and just like make a small buyout. You don't have to pay that X amount. I think it was 235 million guaranteed US. So that is like big news, especially considering some of the scandals that guy had been through. So if you're familiar with the story, he had been accused of sexual misconduct from several dozen instances. He sat out the entirety of last year due to a combination of that and the contract holdout. Mm-hmm. And so Cleveland ended up acquiring him, the Cleveland Browns. They bring him in, pay him all this money. He's suspended for the first 11 games, but they wrote the contract, so he only makes a $1 million base, so he doesn't lose that much in that guaranteed money in suspension.
With regards to some of the clubs in the Premier League, so we're talking the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United. They're not particularly fond of their American owners. For example, Manchester United, the Glazer family, Joel and Avram Glazer.
They hate them. Hate them.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the cause of that is? And do you think that, the same could be leveled at the Kroenkes, at Arsenal, Fenway Sports Group at Liverpool?
Liverpool, I don't really know much about their hatred towards Fenway Sports Group. I know there was a rumor that they were trying to bring in some American executives, but I don't know if that really came through. Arsenal hates Stan Kroenke, and I mean, they hate them. Even hearing it from the States, because I'm not a Stan Kroenke fan myself. He's done some really shady shit. He's moved the team from St. Louis to LA, although they were in LA to begin with, under really shady circumstances. He kind of threw the entire city under the bus, and then he moved. And then what ended up happening is I don't know how much of that is due to, Kroenke just being an asshole or, Arsenal's relative underachieving in comparison to what they spend. The Glazers absolutely reviled. I know Man United just hates the Glazers. I think a part of it, too, really came to head with the European Super League last year. Those two were some of the bigger components of that. And they were trying to Americanize professional football, which honestly would have been disastrous because it kind of destroys the whole hierarchy. The Premier League would have been just completely destroyed because you're losing, 6, 7 of your big teams, and they only pulled out just because of the sheer backlash. So you would have had these big teams that would have been poached, but they wouldn't have had a relegation system, which was one of the major things. So you would have lost the ability to compete, which is an issue with some teams stateside. I know, most of your owners in European football are willing to spend. Shad Khan with the Jacksonville Jaguars, they've been a punching bag for the past. Besides 1 year in 2017 when they had the Saxonville defense made the AFC Championship game, they have been just a doormat. They've been one of the worst teams in football. They've been just, their fans were coming out Shad Clown, him with a clown emoji. They have this hairstyle there too. So that's what you worry about if you don't have a relegation system. And I think the fear of that is why they're so reviled, because they don't want an Americanized system in their organizational football.
And that's one thing as well that a lot has been made of because of this potential buyout over here in the UK, is because if this goes through, 10 of the 20 Premier League sides will be owned by American owners or have some investment. West Ham's investment is fairly small. But do you think that there could potentially be a shift into, I know that Ted Bowley, who recently bought Chelsea off Roman Abramovich, of course, Roman Abramovich was under sanctions because of the Russia-Ukraine war. But he mentioned a North versus South game. Do you think that that sort of thing could become fruition in English football if, this trend continues?
Possibly. I mean, once again, I don't know how it is for voting and changing laws. I know you do need some sort of majority. I mean, if you can lure the Saudi owners or some of the the hold off Russian owners into hey, here's some extra money if you go into an all-star game, or maybe some changes to the current system, make it more Americanized. I can kind of see it, but at the same time, the fans would revolt because they're very traditionalist. I mean, from what I've seen. So even thinking about, something like an all-star game or, changes to the point system, relegation, promotion, I think that would not go well. I mean, we saw it with the European Super League.
Shahid Khan at Fulham, who you mentioned, who is owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, he has suffered relegation from the Premier League, and it's on a couple of occasions, and then got the club back up. If Bournemouth were to be relegated out of the Premier League, do you think Bill Foley would hang around?
I think so. I think the main thing is it would lose a lot of value in the team, and he would try to get it back up. I think that's how a lot of owners work. It's not we're going to go down to Champions League or your version of say AAA baseball or the AHL. So it's I'm just going to sell. I mean, that would be a terrible business sense because the value of your franchise would straight up plummet. I feel even though you'd probably be top of the table in Champions League, you want to get to Premier. So I think at the same time, they do anything they can to get back there, even though they would probably take a hit in terms of their profits and overall windfall, just because of, lesser TV contracts, potentially lower attendance, lower prices and seating. So that's the risk they take. But at the same time, they want to get back to that top table. And I think that's why I don't think they're going to try and get out. Unless it's really bad and they're just mid-table over like several years, and they keep leaving money. That's the only way I can see it.
One thing our current owner, Maxim Demin, has done for the club is he's invested a lot of money and done effectively interest-free loans for the club to get us where we are. He's probably still, if this all goes through, which it looks as if 99% chance it is going to, if the case comes that we want to push forward again, will that be the same sort of situation that Bill Foley will do, or will he take loans against the club, do you think?
I'm trying to think how it would go. I know like most of his money is more, it's not like liquid. I know most of his money is invested in several businesses, companies. So I don't know if he's going to do what Demin does, but at the same time, I think he would exhaust every opportunity he could to try and invest in the club. I don't think he's the kind of person who's going to sit on his laurels, even though he might take a loan against the club, but I don't know if it really strikes me as that kind of risk, or like a risk assessment per se. He made his money just like shrewd investments, stock portfolios, really reading the market. So I think that's what he's more or less going to do. I know he's not really a type to change his stripes. He's, I think, mid to late 70s right now. So I think like he's not really in the position to make high risk maneuvers. So I think like he's gonna play relatively conservative in terms of like loan investment. I think he will invest money, but I don't think he's gonna take it out on the club or use it like as sort of a collateral.
Mm-hmm. I think that was one of Manchester United's big things, is that they weren't particularly happy because a lot of money was coming out of the club's coffers, and effectively part of the buyout at Manchester United that the Glazers did was effectively a debt against the club straight away.
Yeah.
So you think this purchase is 100% cash purchase? This 130 million.
I don't know about 100% cash purchase. I know there will probably be some loan in there as well, but for the most part, I think there will be a decent cash investment in that. I don't think like Bill Foley has the money to buy two separate clubs full cash. So it'll be around 250 million. I think there is some investment in there. I know he's trying. I was looking up an article online from the Daily Mail. He's bringing in I'm trying to think who the guy is they're bringing in. Try and bring him in. John Textor. So he's like with a credit facility worth up to $450 million. So there is going to be some credit involved in this as well. They're going to get loans and investment. So there may be some cash, but for the most part, it is going to be like credit-based.
Mm-hmm. With regards to John Textor, actually, he's got an investment into Crystal Palace at the moment, if I'm correct in thinking.
Yes.
And also Botafogo in Brazil. Will he be hands-on at the club? And is that even possible in the Premier League?
I don't know enough about John Textor to say that either or. I think so. It says like because I was looking this up last night when you asked me to do the interview. So I was interested in it because you like getting an American owner stateside. It's fascinating to me. Yeah. So I feel like he will have some sort of hands-on approach. I don't once again I don't know how he his managerial style is. I don't know how much of a role he has in Botafogo or Crystal Palace. I know he's a relatively smaller owner in both, even though Botafogo he's more majority apparently. But I think at the same time, I think Foley's more of the money man. Like with Vegas Golden Knights, he's not the one who really makes the decisions. The ones who make the decisions are general manager Kelly McCrimmon and team executive George McPhee. Those are the two guys who make most of the executive decisions. He's the one who mostly signs off on it. So Textor is probably might be your GM per se.
Yeah. Do we think that we might see the general manager from Vegas Golden Knights also being involved in AFC Bournemouth and Lyon?
I don't think so. Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee are longtime hockey men. I think they're going to relatively stay in that hockey world, especially per se if things go south for the Vegas Golden Knights. I think both are getting fired. So I don't think they're going to have any role with Bournemouth.
Of course, Vegas Golden Knights have done very, very well. And that does beg the next question. And like I say, we're a very, very small team, Steve. But we can dream. And we can have those amazing dreams of, what if we can push into Europe after a couple of seasons? Do you think that could potentially be his aim to actually get into European football? And that would be the first time for this football club to actually raise the name of the football club to then be able to sell it on at a later point.
I think that's the dream of every owner who tries to buy into this league. I think that's the ultimate goal would be to try and boost the reputation of the club, try to create that reputation of, oh, Bournemouth is like, the Leicester City of the modern time. Get a team that was, relatively mid-table, pushes up thanks to a great owner and has this incredible story, is able to play in Champions League even for a year or two, boost up the reputation of the league and just raise its value. I think that would hopefully be best case scenario. I don't know if it's going to be reality just because of the cutthroat nature of the Premier League, but I think he's going to do everything in his power to get there.
One of the interesting things about our club as well is we do have a large catchment area. We're quite secluded in terms of football teams. We are the closest team to ourselves is Southampton. They are, a decent drive away. Um, but there's a lot of potential supporters to tap into. Is that probably, a big factor why Bill Foley has chosen Bournemouth over? Because there's clubs in the Championship with stadiums that are ready, stadiums that are ready to be Premier League stadiums. Is that potential legacy why he's taken on Bournemouth rather than going to a side like Hull, for example, who have got a stadium which is, fantastic? You could say one of the more traditional clubs. They are in League One, but Sheffield Wednesday or Derby or someone like that. Do you think to tap into that potential market and build a stadium which is going to be something that is going to be a legacy for him could be why he's chosen us over others?
I think potentially, I don't think he's jumped into this willy-nilly. I think he's done years of research in terms of profitability and viability of the Premier League. I think he's had teams look into certain profiles of potential whereabouts, like, oh, okay, maybe X team would be ideal, plan B is X, Y, Z as well. This one, no go, because maybe it's in a deep competitive league, maybe it's like in the heart of London, and then you're going to have deep competition with several other teams to try and fight over for the hearts and minds of the people. I think that did play a role into it, especially with viability, overall ticket sales. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much of that is really a big thing. I know with Vegas Golden Knights, I know the NHL ticket sales are a big part of profitability of the teams. You don't really have the huge TV contracts like, say, the NFL or baseball has, so you don't have to worry about attendance to really get that, even though NFL attendance is really strong. Baseball is more the one with the question there, but once again, TV contracts are huge. They have revenue sharing, so most owners are going to make a pretty decent net. I think, too, with Bill Foley and how he chose his team, I think it also was potential upside. So I think with Bournemouth, I think this was a deliberate decision done over years. I think this was something that okay, this team has untapped potential. I think this is a sort of thing we can do to build that team. And is it viable? We have the money to invest in that. Let's go. And the same thing he did with Lyon and France. So I think it was the same thing there.
Of course, the transfer market is starting to pick up, across world football after the COVID pandemic. It did have a little bit of a lull, but big money is being spent again. And when Bill Foley completes this, and it's expected to happen before the World Cup, we go straight into a January transfer market. Do give us, because I don't really understand the draft system very well. Do tell us how that differs, rather than us going out and buying a player from Liverpool.
Well, the difference thing with the draft is, like for the NHL, it's going to take years to really bring a player up and develop him into your system. So in North America, we have more of a feeder system. So we don't actually have a hands-on approach with the development. Like say, Bournemouth has a youth academy, Man City has a youth academy. Nearly every professional club in Europe has a youth academy. It's different in the States. They don't actually have a role in the development of systems. Most of that's done by, in the NHL, for example, junior leagues. So like you have the Ontario Hockey League, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, the Western Hockey League. Those feed into the NHL. You can either draft or get them out of free agency. North America as well. Collegiate system. You have college prep leagues, the USHL, the North American Hockey League, a relatively smaller one. So those are your leagues that really come in. You also have high schools. So they either feed into college. Some of them get drafted outright into the NHL. So that's how the system relatively works. But at the same time, in the NHL, you're not really going to see many players come out immediately and make an impact. You may see maybe like one or two, maybe three at best case scenario. The NFL, it's different. You've got players straight out of college. So they have the system, high school, college. It's more centralized. So like the NHL would be more different. NFL is just collegiate. You have players draft, they can make an immediate impact. Like first round talents are expected to be impact players. Second and third round, solid contributors. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round, depth. And then you have undrafted free agents that can make an impact there as well. And we do have a sort of transfer market in free agency, but you're not giving out the amazing bucks as well. So in free agency, they're automatically able to go to any bidder. With organizational football, if I'm mistaken, you have to pay the club X amount, and then you have to negotiate a new contract with the player. Yeah. So you eliminate paying the old club, X amount of money, unless it's a restricted free agent. Then you're not paying money, you're paying draft picks. So you're able to trade draft picks. So one of the bigger trades, for example, over the past, the Jack Eichel trade, for example. Like you traded some futures. I'm trying to think. Alex Tuck, relatively big player as well. Peyton Krebs, former first-round draft pick of the Vegas Golden Knights, relatively highly regarded prospect. Only played a handful of games for Vegas as well. And then you have another prospect in there as well. But you also traded a first-round pick, which ended up becoming mid-table because Vegas had a really disappointing season last year. A lot of injuries. A lot of underperformance. They missed the playoffs entirely, which is the first time this has happened in their career or their franchise history, which is a catastrophic failure for Vegas, especially with their expectations and, the main goal of them reaching the Stanley Cup and winning a championship for the first time in their history. So I think there's going to be high expectations for them off the bat. I don't know if they're going to be as high as Vegas because I think they're going to go more conservative this time. Like the original goal for Vegas was, build your team up, playoffs by year 3, Stanley Cup competing by year 6. I think they're going to try more like that. It's just making the Cup their first year really push the window and accelerated that. So I hope he, fixes some of the mistakes he has made with Vegas. I don't know if he's owned like another team in the past. I think this was his first foray into professional sports. But I think at the same time, as well, I don't know if he's going to be big on the transfer market immediately. I think he wants to, get a feel for how the team is, have an assessment period, and then potentially hit the transfer market. Like you guys don't get a lot of understanding of the North American systems. So what I try to do, I get a little complicated. Unfortunately, I kind of ramble, but at the same time, it's like, it's different. Once again, you have, youth development squads, you have, transfer systems, relegation, promotion. North American, relatively different, pure feeder systems that come into a draft that spreads talent out evenly, but at the same time, they're able to hit free agency, like maybe after year 4, 5, 6 in the professional leagues. And I know that's a big sticking point for baseball. They had a big strike over the past, past spring. That was one of the things as well. They wanted to hit lower arbitration and free agency, which is, Like if a big player hits free agency in organizational football, it's like world-changing event. Like more or less, they don't hit free agency unless it's like a really bad situation or a player that's aged.
When the Super League was mentioned, they said that they were, because Barcelona are in a mess, Real Madrid are in a mess, but they said that they had built that to actually get the revenues away from these respective leagues, so the Premier League, the
Yep.
La Liga, Serie A, as well, and
And then centralize it into like one big league, and the teams make the money. So as
yeah,
I said, they were trying to Americanize it, and that's
yeah,
why it's unironic that a lot of American owners were trying to push for that as well, like the Glazers, the Kroenkes, a few other North American teams as well.
yeah,
That and to protect their interests as well. So they didn't have to, they don't have to worry about relegation. They don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They can just play football, make big bucks, and stay on top. Unless, the European Super League completely fell apart, like in the future. But that's unfortunately now a pipe dream because, fans got pissed, rightfully so. Because in European League, you do not want to become Americanized. I don't think that would be worst case scenario because it would destroy the entire fabric of the European football ecosystem.
One thing I've always thought as well is because there is no relegation. So, in Bournemouth, years and years and years ago, were in all sorts of financial turmoil, and the reason that was relegations to the league below. Secondly, poor mismanagement. We was trying to push ourselves forward under people that didn't have the money but spending way too much. And there's a lot of situations like that with teams that have dropped out of the Premier League. Does that really happen in American sport?
Sometimes it does happen. I know there have been teams that have declared bankruptcy in the past, even in the NHL. Pittsburgh Penguins were one team that declared bankruptcy in the early to mid 2000s, but that was because they lost most of their revenue streams due to a arena renovation. The Phoenix Coyotes are a notorious example of this. They moved to Glendale. They've been bleeding money for years. The NHL's had to infuse money. They've had to take over ownership of the team. They're actually trying to get a new stadium in Tempe. They got kicked out of Glendale because delinquent rents and they weren't making enough money. They were just, once again, bleeding money. Glendale got pissed at their shit. And also nowadays they're playing in a college stadium for Arizona State, at least for the next 3 years. And they have to play second fiddle. So Arizona State actually gets the pick of, first dates, sponsorships, overall attendance figures as well. So it's a rough situation. If they can't get a new stadium, I don't know what they do. But I know it's relatively rare these days to see a team that's gone into financial turmoil. The NFL, you're making big money from revenue sharing, or not revenue sharing, but TV contracts and attendance figures. You have to completely be a total moron to lose money in the NFL. It's foolproof. The only team I can see being that are the Washington, newly renamed Commanders. They were formerly called the Redskins. Dan Snyder's a terrible owner. Imagine him owning a Premier League team that's oh God, this is going to be a shit show. Because if this were say, oh, you're being owned by Dan Snyder, I'd be much more pessimistic than I would about Bill Foley.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Steve. It's
Absolutely.
been really, really insightful. And final thing, please do tell us a bit more about Urinating Tree.
I know it's a weird name. It's it was a name I made up on Xbox Live when I was 15. But I'm on YouTube under Urinating Tree. I do a lot of stuff for the National Football League, the NFL. So I do a bit on that every single week. I know they've been really trying to push into Europe. And they're adding a game in Germany this year, relatively underrated market. The UK, they've been trying to really cultivate over the past 10 years. So I'm doing a lot of stuff with that. I do the NHL. I don't do a lot of stuff with organizational football and Premier League. I did a bit on the World Cup in 2018, probably looking to do one this year as well. But, I mean, it's weird seeing it in the winter, but that's a whole different can of worms with guitar. But I also have a Twitter account under Urinating Tree, Instagram, urinating_tree. But once again, man, thank you for having me on. This is a great conversation to have.
Not a problem at all, and my pleasure, Steve. And we will be doing a World Cup feature as well
Yes,
when that all starts. So, by all means, it'll be a pleasure to have you back on for that.
absolutely. I mean, my knowledge of organizational football is relatively limited, but I try to research as much as I can for that sort of situation.
No, great stuff. Well, thank you so much, Steve, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Definitely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining me on this special show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on the show. Please do also remember we had our interview with Kieran Maguire where we spoke about Bill Foley, dug into the financials. So that was a really, really interesting conversation, and also worthwhile checking out if you want to find out a lot more about this potential buyout. Also, we have recently had Colton Palmer on the show. We've also had Efan Akuku, Harry Redknapp, Sean Teal, Steve Fletcher, Steve Cook, and tomorrow we have a special show for you at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. We have got an interview with former Cherries manager Lee Bradbury. So please do remember to hit that subscribe button, that bell button, and do remember to hit that reminder on that Lee Bradbury interview because it is really, really interesting and lots of new information that you might never have heard. But until the next show, up the cherries, and I'll see you then.